Hey, Internet. This is a field in the central United States. Central? Mid? I don't know. No, that's not what we're doing. What are we doing? This is from a internet acquaintance friend. We will call him S. He posted on the disc golf form check page, looking for some help. And this is an interesting issue that I have not covered on the channel before. And this fine gentleman was asking for some help, so I thought we would try to get him some help and also pass that help along to the internet as a whole. So thank you, S. We appreciate your willingness to participate. So what is happening here is what I would call a hip escape. So the front hip is, I should shut up and play the video. That's what it looks like. I call this a hip escape because there's an athletic movement happening in the front hip that makes the disc go, but it is not the most efficient movement possible. And this is extra hard because this is obviously a very athletic individual, and once athletic people learn a movement, it's way hard to change it, especially when it does work. Like, that's a pretty good throw. But let's see if we can dive into what's going on and why. So first thing that I see with my coaching method is this leg is stuck too far south and it's going to get too extended, which means that this weight is anchoring that and preventing that hip. So here's the pelvis, here's the femur. We want that to be able to pop forward. It currently can't because this is holding the rope of pelvis to rear leg is too taut, and it doesn't look bad there. But as you move forward, and I wish this was on YouTube and I had frame by frame. My fault. So there, the pelvis to rear hip line is pulled to pelvis to rear leg line, excuse me, is pulled too taut, and there's no range of motion there. So let me demo that on a human body, which I happen to have. So when we get too strung out here because we were on the rear leg too long, the line from my front hip to my rear leg is pulled tight, and I can't move this hip forward anymore. It just can't go because it's pulled tight. When I move my leg into the position I want it in, then my rear hip all of a sudden has this range of motion where it can pop forward. And that's exactly what we want. We want it to be able to pop forward, not spin forward. When it spins forward, there's nothing to slow it down, and then you don't get the deceleration to happen at the right time, which is a very important part of the kinematic sequence. So I want the hip to have range of motion where it can go quickly, and then it gets slowed down as it starts to pull the leg around with it. So this doesn't work because my sequence isn't right. So then what happens from there? So from this spot where the rear leg is strung out too much, again, this human is very athletic and gets a huge front hip clear. So perfect front leg extension. The hip is now poking out that way because it was the front leg straightened and cleared the hip that way. That's excellent. But like the way I was explaining this to this person was that the center of gravity, as the hip clears, it's almost like the center of gravity is pulled that way too. And this is not scientifically accurate. I don't have motion capture data to back this up. This is just how I conceptualize it, which may not be correct, but I do think is useful, at least for understanding it. So the center gets pulled that way too. And what I want to happen is I want this hip's motion and this hip's motion to be balanced on the center. So the center stays there, because that's what allows you to leverage pushing on the ground to make both hips move faster because there's this strong central post to the throw. So because this front leg move is so aggressive and it clears the front hip so hard, watch what happens in the follow through. He hops right a little bit. His foot placement moves, so here's his foot placement at the end. And if we back up, so that's not a really good indicator, but here's the center of his ankle. So that, you know, maybe it didn't hop, but it definitely pivoted in a way that we don't want. Let's get rid of those lines. Is that the slowest we can make this? Facebook? Yep, it is. Okay, so sets down, rocks onto the ankle, pivots. And then, okay, so it's not a hop, but it's a very aggressive pivot. And then here we can see the balance is definitely that way, which indicates to me that the hip movement that way was too strong and we weren't in balance. He does a good job catching it, re-athletic, but that's not the motion we want. Okay, so there's another view. Let me go grab that one. Okay, so here is another view. Play at full speed a couple times so you can just see how much power this dude has. Bam. But you see how poppy it is? Pop. It's like the front hip is clearing too aggressively, and that's inhibiting balance. Okay, so here to slow down. Big X step. I think this guy can get away with it. But again, the rear, that's the first sign of trouble, is the rear leg getting strung out that much. And then as it lifts off, it just rotates in place rather than moving into a counterweight roll. So that's the first thing that I would suggest changing for our friend S. But just like look at how much force that is, all boom from the hip. And that's not in balance. This is not what a body in balance looks like, because the hat's going to fall off. And I'm trying to explain why this is not productive, because it's not productive because one side of the body is doing all the work and there isn't time for the momentum of the following side of the body to contribute equally to the throw. So I'll try to explain that in looking at a human mode. So yeah, all that force, that little pop there that just happened, that didn't go into the disc. Boom. Like there's too much explosive force in the body after the disc is gone. And look at the rear leg. Shoom. That anytime the rear leg swings around like that, that to me, that says there was too much rotation left in your body after the throw, and your kinematic sequence and your brace didn't do a good job of harvesting all that momentum and projecting it into the disc. Easy to say, very, very hard to do. It's a very elusive feeling. Okay, so let's see if we can explain some of that in a way that's useful in demo mode. So I think what's happening is he's getting this strung out too much to where the rear leg can't do what it wants. So what the rear leg wants to do first is don't get so strung out. So this still has some range of motion, and we're going to increase the range of motion by allowing the rear leg to drift forward. So that allows, boom, this hip pop to happen, and you actually get extension in both legs and popping of the rear hip, not active in an actual throw. If you want to fake it and make it active while you're learning this mechanic, absolutely go for it. But realize that driving your rear leg that way, kicking your rear leg, popping your hip forward, these are not active things in pro level form. They happen passively. Maybe the extension is a little bit active, but like you don't have to think about it. You're just thinking about open, load, bending both knees, unload. And it'll just happen when you start pushing into the front leg, pushing the front leg into the ground, the rear leg will extend also. You don't have to think twist or kick or push my leg back there, it just goes. But that's why we start the one leg position with your leg where we want it to end up, and in an exaggerated version of where we want it to end up, so that you get used to throwing here. And then when you move to a one step or a standstill, you're moving into that position, allowing the rear leg to drift into a counterweight roll, letting the rear leg drift there, and being used to this feeling from a one leg. So that's the rear leg stuff. And then the front leg stuff, this guy is just so athletic that he can get onto the front leg and pop the front leg so hard that it makes the throw work. But the front side is just getting out of the way of the rear side. What we want, again, the one leg drill sets you up for this, is you want the torque to be centered around the spine. If my whole everything is moving this way, then the center of my throw is dropping sticks. The center of my throw is moving that way too. And we don't want that, because it's gonna make everything roundy, and it's gonna be really easy to miss right. It's gonna be really easy to early release and miss left, and everything's gonna be bad. So you really want just that centered, consistent plane, anchored. That's gonna make everything way easier. So again, how I get there is start centered. This is your center. Lift the rear hip, drop the rear hip, and let the throw happen from there. Then you're throwing centered. So if what I would suggest for our friend S is do some of my one leg drills and work those as a progression back into your throw. And that'll show you what it feels like to throw centered. And if you can just get a one leg position and just get your throw snappy from there and feel how much power is available there. And you know, I tell most people that you can get back close to your max distance there. That's probably not going to work for you, because you're so athletic, you're getting so much power out of your front hip, you're probably not going to get to your current distance from a one leg. But you can probably get 75% of it pretty easily, and you will be getting it with much, much, much less effort muscularly than you are currently. So when you have that feeling, then work it back into your walk up, drop the speed on the walk up, make it a walk up, not a run up, and try to keep that feeling of centered throwing. And then that'll allow your rear side's weight and momentum to contribute to the throw also. So I'll get you a link to I already linked to the crumple zone video, but I'll put it on this one so that other folks can find it too. But that's my ideas on, like, you want the hips here, and then you load the front leg, and then you want the hips here. So that's what's not happening in your throw, because your rear leg is stuck too far behind you. And to compensate for that, you're just blasting the front hip clear and forcing some hip motion, but it's not centered, so it's not as powerful as it could be. Okay, hope that's helpful to you, S, and to you, Internet. That is, I haven't ever seen anyone do another video on that, and it's not a common motor pattern, but it is common in very athletic people that have been throwing for a long time that haven't quite captured the nuance of this brace stuff yet. So hopefully that's helpful for people who are moving that way already naturally, and helpful as context so other folks can understand the brace a little bit better. All right, thanks again. See ya.